to talk about the table topics contest. So I know a couple of you are newer Toastmasters. And if you are, the two that we do in the fall, of course, the humorous speech and the table topics contest. I'm sure all of you have experienced table topics at the club level. You've probably been called upon in a club meeting and had that awful feeling where you go to the front of the room and you're going, gosh, I wish I had the question just before because I could have answered that one. The table topics contest is an interesting challenge because it's the extemporaneous speaking and you're going to do it in front of a bigger crowd. Now, some people seem to have a natural gift for doing table topics. We have with us this evening just such a person. I have had the pleasure of knowing Johnny Rodriguez maybe 3 years now. I have heard him speak numerous times. He's also a marvelous plan-speaking Toastmaster. He does excel at table topics. He has won numerous times at the district level in table topics, in both the big 27 and the smaller 27. Though for those of you that are around for a while, that means something. For the rest of you, it doesn't. That's okay. It's geography. So I would like to introduce to you now the person who's going to present to us how to be a great contestant for table topics, distinguished Toastmaster Johnny Rodriguez.
Great keys to table topics is that it is a common activity. Let me just go with a little humor. I'm going to steal from our humorous contestants for a moment. How many of you are normally asked outside of Toastmasters to give a speech? Has anybody ever grabbed you by the arm, pulled you aside and said, we want you to give a speech to just a room full of people outside of Toastmasters? Really doesn't happen, right? And just think of this one as another possibility. You go into work and the big meeting is going to happen with all of the top executives of the company. The CEO of your company hands you a yellow legal pen. Evaluate my presentation. Tell me where it worked well and where I need to improve. How many of you would volunteer? Me, I'll do that. Not again likely to happen, right? Just not, maybe in the bizarro universe, but not in the universe that we happen to live in. But let me ask you just something very basic. Are you ever asked to give your opinion? Does anybody ever ask you questions? Are you ever asked among friends sometimes to comment on issues? Or just give your thoughts on something? That's distilled table topics, isn't it? To me, the greatest power in Toastmasters is that there is a sense of newness. How many of you have been in this organization 10 years or more? How many of you hear people say, it gets tiring? I mean, it's the same old thing over and over. Have any of you ever heard Toastmasters opine that? Well, I admit I have. I probably have made those comments myself in a benighted period of my life. But table topics is a de novo activity. Isn't it being asked to recreate yourself over and over and over again as you respond to various questions? Now, to me, the joy of a table topics contest is that it's really separate competitions. We heard from our humorous speech competitors, and I honor you as fellow champions, that they rehearsed their speeches. They probably went to clubs and had round robins and all of that. Let me let you in a little secret. Everybody listening carefully? You can't do that at table topics. It doesn't work. It's in effect a different competition. The question or the comment or the poem or the saying, proverb that you're asked to comment for table topics at the club is different from the area. At the area, it's different from the division. And none of those may have any link at all to what you get at the district level. Now, there's certain things I can tell you that are really helpful. For example, and I've never got why competitors don't really understand this. The contest master shakes your hand and then sits down. Don't start speaking until the contest master is fully seated and is a part of the audience and ready to listen to you. If you jump the gun, you are creating a disadvantage because you're suddenly in competition not only with the other people in the contest, but with the contest master, him or herself. Because aren't they focusing on the fact that he or she is sitting at the same time? You want their attention to be squarely and solely laser pointed at you. You also, of course, need to listen to the question. Now, in some clubs, they will tell you that you can ignore a tabletop question. Answer any question you want. That does work in clubs. But guess what? You do that in a contest, and I'll guarantee one thing. You're going to look at that first place trophy, but you ain't going home with it. You are going to need to be focused on the question, and what is most essential in a tabletop contest is that you listen to the question carefully the first time, I believe, and the second time, you get ready to launch. How am I going to deal with it? What approach am I going to take? What will work? What is going to give me the answer most likely to win this particular contest? Now, why do I say all that up front? Because I want to not only give you a feeling for what it's like to compete in a table topics contest, but give you an enthusiasm for table topics. How many of you have served as a table topics master recently, in the last, let's say, 2 months? Play with me a little bit. What's the typical reaction to the Toastmasters in the audience for your table topics master? We talk about eye contact in Toastmasters, right? It suddenly disappeared, right? Also, people are buried. They're writing their laundry list. They're doing anything but acting like, I'm ready, come on, let's have a question. Table topics is fun. I have a bit of an imagination. I've been accused of being too deeply into fantasy. Now, why anybody would think I'm at all attracted to fantasy, I would have no idea. You know, I dress conservatively. I would never show off. You know, just happen to have this guy from Krypton on my socks. But the idea of table topics is take a chance to rip off your outer layer, as it were, and try to become somebody fresher, newer, more inventive, more creative, more willing to be in the moment and more willing to seize the moment. Because that's what makes a table topics contestant effective, powerful, authentic. It's a good word we've heard tonight. And also in tune with giving an answer that'll be memorable. I'd like to just offer 3 basic ideas as to what I think helps a person win a table topics contest. The first thing is to be creative. When you hear the question, think, what would be fun? What would be enjoyable? What would put me in the moment for 2.5 minutes and sail with that moment? I was once asked a question at a club that somebody could have been asked in a contest. Because the table topics master decided she was going to make my life miserable. She said, tell me of your life as a woman, and she's looking around the room, Johnny. And I know what she was trying to do. I'm going to bury you. There's no way in the world you can answer this question. It's impossible. I walked up, shook her hands, made eye contact, said, first of all, the name is Johnny. I then talked about going to Vassar and the birth of my first child. So what I did is, in effect, use table topics as a martial arts exercise. I disarmed the scary question, and then it was mine. You know, I was the master of the universe for 2.5 minutes at that point because I totally controlled the question. I think all speech competitors are also students of other speech competitors. We like to talk shop. We like to talk about what works. Jim Dooley, who was not here tonight, is a very able Toastmaster who's also been a district table topics champion. His question at the district was, tell me about your life as a mule. Now, Jim Jim went on and at one point mentioned his 2 sons. He said, my 2 sons, adopted of course. And it was a pretty tight contest until then. But the humor, because Jim was poised, Jim was ready. Jim was getting an inside fastball, but he was still willing to step back and take it deep to right field, over the wall easily. That poise and that sense of brilliance, that sense of I am the master of the repartee, won him the contest that day. What I also find is helpful is, in addition to being creative, to being in the moment, is to also be daring. I remember once being given a question, this was at, again, a district level tabletop contest. Tell me how you would find a missing person. And I told the story of looking for somebody who was 6'6", was a great basketball player, played for Chicago, but didn't want anybody to find him anymore. So I was telling a story about my attempt to find Michael Jordan. And so I finally found Michael Jordan. I was going to drag him back, and he said, no. Here's an autographed baseball, here's an autographed basketball. Leave me alone. Don't tell anybody you ever found me. Please, let me rest. But that captured the moment because everybody else, and I saw the video later, talked about Toastmaster connected events. But bringing in Michael Jordan, it took the audience to a whole different place. Sometimes we go too hard with Toastmasters. How many of you hear people talk about Toastmasters, 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 and more Toastmasters, and it almost sounds like a dental drill? I mean, the purpose of Toastmasters is to improve our skills so we can do well in Toastmasters, but far beyond that, excel beyond Toastmasters, isn't it? So therefore, going outside the boundaries there and talking about Michael Jordan. In 2009, when I won the District 36 Tabletop Championship, the question was about becoming any character in literature that you wish to become. I went last, so I didn't hear all of the other competitors. But I heard Charles Dickens, I heard different other great literary characters. Well, I walked out and said, wow, I get to be anybody I want? Woohoo! Again, showing a little enthusiasm for the moment and enjoying the contest. And I said, obviously, the Dark Knight Avenger, the Prince of Gotham City, the fearsome enemy of all criminals. Bruce Wayne, who in his other identity is, say it with me, audience, Batman. I had the contest won right from then because, again, with my love of comic books and my playful nature, I decided, let's go with Batman. It was daring, but it won the contest. One thing that I've learned about all contests, and I think the principle holds, is that if you're a judge, you're looking at 6 competitors, 10 competitors, you need to make a difference. So if you're really good and different from the other speeches, then you in effect turn it into a 2-person competition because it's the best person from this group versus you. So that way you have a 50-50 chance of winning. It's a risky strategy, but it's also a strategy that I find makes things more fun and enlivens things. So again, you want to be playful, you want to be daring. You also want to be in the mood. There's a movie, according to Rotten Tomatoes, nobody likes it, but I do. Has anybody ever heard of the movie August Rush? Freddie Highmore was in it. It was a movie about a young man who could walk along and hear music from everything, and he could internalize it and became a great composer. At least that was the story. Table topics is like that. You sort of just sometimes have to read the mood. You go with what you sense, and you spring like a cobra. You launch. You're out there. And what that does is it frees us. See, for most of us, it's the fear of public speaking that takes us over and limits us, shackles us, as a matter of fact. But to me, the whole idea of I get 2.5 minutes to run amok is exciting. The NFL has a 2-minute drive, right? How many of you have rooted for a team and hoped your team could pull out a game with 2 minutes of time? Guess what? The NFL has a dirty secret. 2 minutes can last about 20. We've seen that, right? In tabletop, it's 2.5 minutes is, guess what? 150 seconds. 2.5 minutes. You go to 2 minutes and 31 seconds, you can't ask for a commercial break. You get told, thank you, you've been disqualified, come back next year and run through the gauntlet again. So it's even more exciting than watching the Redskins and RG3 try to win the game with 2 seconds left on the clock. Because it's personal, it's an adventure that you're going through, but there is some of the same kind of tension. The most critical thing for any contest, and again, we're talking about the Table Topics contest, and if you take nothing else with you, please take this with you. Everything we do in Toastmasters should be an S-P-E-E-C-H, speech, right? Don't we preach opening, body, conclusion for speeches? Opening, body, and conclusion also works for evaluation. And opening, body, and conclusion definitely works for table topics. You want a clear opening, a clear body, and if you can wrap up, if you can in a 2.5 minute presentation take it all the way back to the front, you're showing mastery. And really, if a contest is working well, and I thank Jim Cole that he's helping us to have better contests this year, but if a contest is working well at district, don't you want the master of humor within those competitors to be the humorous champion? Don't you want the international speech champion to be the master of the inspirational story? Don't you want the best evaluator to be the master of analysis and putting things together logically? And the table topics champion should be, under those same rules, the person who can, for 2.5 minutes, show you inspired speech, show you intuitive speech, and show you clever speaking for 2.5 minutes. So I would urge all of you, do not be afraid of table topics. You can master it. It can become your friend. And since there's no practice, whether you've been a Toastmaster for 2 minutes or 25 years, you can enter a table topics contest at any club you belong to. So I dare you, I challenge you this year, say yes to table topics when the club season comes. Thank you, Madam Master, so much.
That was really marvelous. I took some tremendous notes. We're very enthusiastic about the opportunities in table topics. You now have an opportunity to ask Johnny questions in the same way that we talked to Edmund and to Annie. Who has our first question? Gentleman in the blue shirt, your name is?
My name is Donald Park.
Donald?
My biggest fear, I think, is table topics. I don't mind being the table master, giving the questions. I just don't like being the person to answer them. One of the biggest reasons why, I think, is because whenever you give a speech, clearly in your manual it says you need to know the material. And if you're being asked a question and you don't know what it is, obviously you don't have time to prepare. And if they ask you an oddball question, you have absolutely no mastery of that topic. So how do you even begin to respond to that?
We all have an ability to make things up on the fly. How many of you have ever had a boss ask you a blunt question that you didn't have an answer to, but yet you tap danced enough to convince him or her that you knew what you were talking about? Anybody ever have that experience at work? If you have, then you can do table topics. Or your child asks you the embarrassing question that you don't want to answer. You're probably not going to tell your child, for the next 20 years, you may not say anything to me at all about anything. You're going to come up with something. You're going to have some level of responses. It's true we're storytellers, but we're also people who want to respond to other human beings, and most of us can normally come up with some type of an answer. It may be far-fetched, but sometimes the best table topics answers are total flights of fancy, and you catch people with your cleverness and with your wittiness.
But if you don't have either of those.
I think we all do at some level. I think you have to challenge yourself to find it. I didn't believe I did in 1991, and I shocked myself about 3 years later when I discovered it was there.
Yeah, that's a great question. First question, Donald. Amber, did you want to have your hand up?
Yes, but I
Amber?
have a club development question.
Okay?
I'm a longtime Toastmaster, more than 20 years, and one of the disappointments for me is in the club I was in for the last 7 or 8 years, I've done some speeches on how to do table topics, and we've had other speeches on that, and yet people continue to just answer the question briefly in 15 seconds and sit down. And we can't seem to get people to develop full answers. This just happens over and over and over in meetings, even though we keep saying what's required and trying to do it. The questions are always enthusiastic and fun, and yet the majority of the people still don't develop a table topics 2.5-minute answer. So what advice do you have for the club and for the table topics master especially?
I think with the table topics master, sometimes you have to go with softball questions. You have to treat the club as if they're all brand new Toastmasters who joined 24 seconds ago, and offer them the most softball type question you can offer. For example, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Or tell me the name of the pet cat you owned when you were 12 years old, or various questions like that. Now, what you're going to find is that people will slowly come out of themselves. But here's an idea. Maybe if you have a club with some resources, you could, for example, buy a ticket for dinner somewhere, or offer some type of prize, maybe a best-selling book, and say for one meeting, we are going to vote on the table topic. Whoever came up with the cleverest response won't get a ribbon, but will get this best-selling book. In other words, something to make it a little bit more fun, something to encourage someone to be a little bit more daring or come out of themselves a little bit more.
Yeah, I would like to add something to that. One of the challenges in a club like that is to get people talking. You can do it with a softball question, but you can also do it if you know your club members by giving them a table topic that is right in the hit zone for what they like, so that they will feel comfortable standing up and talking about that subject. So rather than gotcha questions, which is what some clubs do, throw each person a question designed for them that will motivate them to stand up and want to share. And you'll find that that changes a little bit. The other thing I wanted to say is that the Burgay Club, we organized this meeting. We also go out to clubs and do workshops. In fact, I was just passed a note asking if we could go to a club on Thursday and present a workshop like this for 20 minutes. It's hard to do in 20 minutes, but when you have an outside person come into the club to stimulate interest, it's like the husband and wife. The husband tells the wife to do something, she won't do it, but if the next door neighbor mentions the same thing, she'll do it, or vice versa with the husband. Sometimes having an outside person come into the club with a short presentation, a workshop that gets everyone involved, will be just what you needed to get that club into a different level.